Ben Shapiro made a video called The Basics of Watch Collecting with Ben Shapiro, and someone in the comments said, I cannot wait for Nico Leonard to react to that. Well, you ask, I deliver. In 2024, you guys complained constantly about a wee spot on the wall. I knocked down the whole wall, put a sofa there, I put curtains there, I put a guy there. It's all sorted now. There's no spots on the wall anymore. Before we get into the video, make sure you subscribe to the channel. We're gonna hit 2 million subscribers in 2025. Subscribe now, and if you want to buy or sell your watch, anything from Casio up to Richard Mille, brideandpinion.com, you can buy an RM67 like this that was made for the South African sprinter Weet van Nieuwkerk. It's a beautiful
athletes.
Made for athletes like me. It only weighs 32 grams, so it doesn't show on my scale. By the way, it's not my watch, just to clarify that. Watch owned by a friend of mine called Owen. Let's get stuck in Ben Shapiro. I don't actually know very much about Ben Shapiro. I have seen several shorts of him. He's very articulate. I think he's very intelligent. I think he's like alpha male.
You're the first person to call Ben Shapiro alpha male.
Well, he comes across like an alpha male. Like, I mean, do you not think so? No? Like I said, I don't know the guy. I've never met him. So I don't know very much, but I know some people say he's controversial.
Some of you know I'm a big watch fan, a bit of a watch collector. And so
He's Jewish?
Yeah.
Oh, I learned something today, and that watch he's wearing is shite. So I don't know what the crack is going on with this video. It's 8 minutes. Don't tell me it's 8 minutes of misery.
I wanted to go through with you how to build a watch collection from the very basics all the way on up to the very expensive. This video is sponsored by our friends over at Balance of Nature.
What is this music?
Today, we're not really going to get into the very, very expensive watch brands because, hell, you have to be really, really rich to afford those very expensive watch brands. Why don't we begin from the beginning? Why buy a nice watch in the first place? Now, the truth is, it ain't to keep the time, because if you really want a watch that keeps the time, your phone's going to do the best job.
What's the point then?
It's really to look...
Well, what's the point?
It's really to look nice. That's all it is. It's a piece of jewelry, essentially.
I actually disagree a wee bit with that because wristwatches weren't a man's accessory. Wristwatches were actually a female's accessory. We're talking about the 1800s, 1900s. Wristwatches were actually called wristlets. Bracelets that women wore, and the man didn't wear any... Man weren't... The male society... Or how do we say? Man, f***'s sake. Men weren't wearing wristwatches. They were wearing pocket watches that they have in their pocket. Pocket watches. Women were wearing wristlets, and those were the first real watches. A jewelry house made a piece of jewelry in a bracelet with a clock or a time hidden in the strap. I mean, Cartier in 1905 was the first one to really make a wristwatch as a wristwatch. It was actually considered very rude to have the time on your wrist. So what he's saying here is right, they're pieces of jewelry, but actually they're tools. With watches you can measure distance, you can measure speed, you can measure time. Dive watches were there to use during dive expeditions. Well, we don't need that anymore. Chronographs were used to measure distance, to measure speed. Those were the tools that we had available to us. Today, we don't need a watch to tell us the time. And indeed, a phone is more accurate, but like watches did have and still have functions.
Let's go through some of the parts of the watch. A bunch of different parts of the watch, and we can explain kind of what you're looking at. Number one, the dial. Okay, this is
Did you see that? That was John Travolta from, what do you call that movie?
Pulp Fiction.
Pulp Fiction, yeah.
what he thinks of when they think of the watch. The dial is the face of the watch. Some of them are quite beautiful. Some of them are very plain. But that is the thing that people are mostly thinking of when they think of the watch. They're thinking of the dial of the watch. Second, there's the case. Sort of the part that goes right around the dial of the watch. Sometimes you'll see engravings on the inside. Rolex very frequently will have an engraving on the case of the watch. Then there's the crystal. That's the glass or the acrylic that's on the top of the watch. So older watches tend to feature acrylic. If you get like an old Rolex from the 1970s, for example, it's very easily scratched. I remember the first Rolex that I ever got was...
Is this like ABC? What is a watch for dummies?
The basics of watch collecting with Ben Shapiro.
Like, this is well really mad basic, to be honest. What is a case? What is a crystal? What is a dial? Do you think there's...
Can't all be watch experts?
Well, I don't think you need to be an expert to know. Like, do you think my son of 2 years old... No, he doesn't know what 2 years...
Show him this video.
An older Rolex. It was very easy to scratch it, and I got irritated with it because every so often I'd just scratch it. I'd have to replace the lens. Then there is...
Incorrect. Let me explain. 1601, Rolex Datejust, indeed had plexiglass. 1801, Rolex indeed had plexiglass. 1801 is a day, by the way. When you scratch a plexiglass, you do not have to replace and remove the glass. You can polish that. gone. You don't have to replace, as he calls, the lens, so that's incorrect. So we'll go back to the basics. Vintage watches had plexiglass. At some point in time, don't pin me down the year, and I can't be searching for it, Rolex changed that to sapphire glass, not just Rolex, but several other brands. And yeah, plexiglass, you can actually very easy remove scratches. I would argue to say it's 10 times easier than with sapphire glass, because I don't think you can actually remove a scratch from sapphire.
Then there are the lugs. The lugs are the things that are going to connect the case to the actual bracelet or strap of the watch, and they're usually connected by some form of pin or screws to the actual bracelet. Then you have the crown. The crown is the thing that you pull out. Depending on whether you have a watch that has a date on the face of it, on the dial of it, it may have 2 or 3 different settings when you pull out the crown of the watch. And now you have the buckle. The buckle is the part that actually is going to hold it together, right? Just like a belt buckle. And then finally you have the strap or the bracelet. Strap is typically...
We've built up such an incredible YouTube channel. We have nearly 2 million followers. We have so many views, and we've done well in life. And now I'm reacting to this bullshit. What the
Should we recreate that?
This is our first video for 2025, mate. Hell, if I saw Ben Shapiro, this must be a banger. This is ridiculous. Well, this is a strap. This is a lug. This is a clasp.
Used for either cloth or leather, and bracelet is used for metal. Okay, those are the different parts of the watch. Okay, then you have different functions of the watch. So many watches.
This is gonna get
basic analog watch.
This is gonna get worse. What the f is this for shit? What is this for shit? Me.
Looks just like an analog clock, the YMCA clock with a couple of hands that are going around. Then you have a chronograph.
YMCA clock. What the fuck, mate? Shut up. I don't know if I can do this. What the fuck? Shut up, fucking kids.
The YMCA clock with a couple of hands that are going around.
YMCA.
A chronograph. Chronographs have the ability to push a button and time, so you can start and stop the clock. So a watch like the one that I'm wearing here, actually, okay, this is a Zenith Rolex Daytona. So they actually switched some of the dials in sort of the more modern Daytona. So
let me see that watch. Sorry to tell you, Ben, but your f***ing bezel's over polished. Go back to your f***ing dealer and sort that shit out. Get a new bezel, lad.
Is not, in fact, a second hand normally. You'll see that the part that's moving here is the second hand, right? At the 9 o'clock position.
Well done.
This is the timer, right? So if I were to hit this top dial,
Funny
to start,
insult. Get a new bezel.
What he has there is indeed a Zenith Rolex Daytona, powered by caliber 4030. The Rolex Daytona, prior to 1988, prior to the shape of Daytona, wasn't even really waterproof. Well, there were waterproof variations of it. However, you couldn't really use the chronograph on the water. In 1988, Rolex brought out a new caliber 4030. I believe that was not made together with Zenith, but Rolex bought the foundation of the El Primero movement and used that in their own watches. Well, this has nothing to do with Zenith anymore. This is still caliber 4030, but fully and utterly made by Rolex. It's a lovely watch, reference number 16523, two-tone Rolex Daytona with an over-polished bezel.
Then you have different styles, so many different styles of watches. Those range from aviator watches, which look like a watch that a pilot would use, to racing watches. Most famously, like Tag Heuer makes racing watches. You see those.
Who?
Tag Heuer.
Can we do that one more time?
Tag Heuer. Famously, like Tag Heuer makes racing watches. You see those in a lot of the movies. Diver watches, the most famous of those would be like the Rolex Submariner. So those were actually designed to dive with, so they are waterproof and you can take them underwater, so you can wear like a very expensive.
They're waterproof, so you can take them underwater.
Rolex field watches, which again are sort of a military-looking watch. Now you have fashion watches. Fashion watches are like Fossil, so they tend to be less expensive. They're just for pretty. They don't have more functionality. They don't look like military watches or diver watches or whatever. For if you're just getting a collection started, a fashion watch is a really good way to do that. So Fossil makes really good-looking fashion watches. For example, I remember some of my first watches were Fossil watches. They're
Listen, Ben, I'm not taking the piss, right? I find this just funny, and I know you're not an expert. You're not trying. Maybe you're trying No, you're not. And I really like the fact you're talking about watches. I appreciate that. And I think we should do a video maybe about watches now. We'll talk about your watches and your bezels. And
Basics part 3.
when you do a video like this, the foundations need to be right. And the foundations are not right. Fashion watches are fashion watches. They're not mechanical marvels. Where other watches, luxury watches, are considered mechanical marvels, there's actually time spent to produce that watch. That's not the case with fashion watches. And Fossil Group, by the way, Fossil Group is going to the shitter at the moment. They bought Michael Kors 10, 15, 20 years ago for like 300 million, if not more, which is now worth 20 million. Nobody really buys Michael Kors watches anymore. And back in the day, Michael Kors watches were like the bollocks. Like, I mean, genuinely the bollocks. I don't know how they done it. It was unbelievable. Everyone wanted Michael Kors watches. Do you remember that?
No.
Do you not remember that?
I never had one.
But do you remember everyone wanted one? In that time, Fossil Group bought Michael Kors. The Fossil Group itself has multiple other fashion brand watches in their stables.
In their stables?
In their stable. How do you call it? In their conglomerate. The Fossil Group also owns Zodiac. And this is a problem, right? I love Zodiac. We're authorized dealers of Zodiac. However, No, I'm just saying it the way it is. I love Zodiac, but I absolutely despise how the Fossil Group is dealing with Zodiac and how they are dealing with their clients. Zodiac is a really cool watch brand with a really cool history, but what they put on the table is not good enough today. And I really want to make sure that that changes this year.
Make Zodiac great again.
Make Zodiac great again. Genuinely, and I spoke with a lot of people within the Fossil Group, so they'll probably be pissed off at me again. Well, I don't really care. Get your shit together.
They're not much help though.
No, the point is...
They're all fossils.
Exactly, but the Michael Kors brand took so much money away from all the other brands, including Zodiac, that they barely have any budget at Zodiac because Michael Kors is going to shit and they're losing money left, right, and center there.
For example, I remember some of my first watches were Fossil watches. They're very cool.
They're not cool, they're dog shit, and if you own one, throw it in the bin. If you're given one by someone, fire this person out of your life, even if it's your parents. I don't care. Dog shite. Before we get into more learnings with Ben Shapiro, I want to introduce you to the new drop of IFL watches. These are Japan inspired. There's 4 variations, and as you can count, this is 1 and this is 2. They're limited to 50 each design. Every dial is hand painted. I really like these. This one has some Japanese tar painted. Well, that's so, like, I can't paint the tree, so I'm quite impressed with that. And this one has, I don't know what it is. Maybe a ninja or whatever this is. Samurai. And these are all painted on the Citizen Chiosa with a really cool bracelet, which is a wee bit of a rip-off of Rolex, but I kind of like it. Make sure you do not miss out. First link in the description, and I really appreciate your support. Now, let's go back to the basics with Ben Shapiro.
If you take a look at sort of best watches for price points, let's say you're starting a collection. So the first watches that I owned were fashion watches, right? These are things like Fossil or Tissot or Seiko. I would recommend, by the way, at these price levels,
I don't think Tissot is liking the fact that you call them a fashion watch, but
that you try to buy used. Because if you buy new, they immediately degrade. Just the way that you would buy a new car, it loses a lot of its value once you come off the lot. You can go to a site like Chrono24 and you can buy yourself a used watch, and they've already absorbed a lot of the downside.
Let me just clarify this. Chrono24 is the dump hole and the dump of every watch dealer with watches they cannot sell. Don't buy it on Chrono24 because that's literally the dog shit of the dog shit. There's a lot of other places where you can buy really good watches. Pre-owned, I think eBay is really, really good.
One of my favorite things to do is a historically refurbished watch. So you can actually go and you can find on eBay World War II.
Well, no offense, but that Rolex is fake.
World War II watches that were in combat or that somebody was issued during World War II.
Let me put it this way. None of the watches you see on the screen there that he shows have been in combat or were World War II watches.
You were having a word war?
I have a war in my head.
A lot of them don't run really well, but for a couple of $100 you can take it to a watchmaker and they can...
These are all scraps that were scrapped together and made up by a Italian watchmaker at the back of a bench in Rome with 2 prostitutes and 6 lines of coke. That's why you don't buy watches, vintage watches from Italy, just saying. It's nothing to do with the coke.
Called Nico Leonardo.
Nicolai Leonardo. Oh yeah! Pizza, spaghetti, culo. Don't waste your money on that shit. It stinks when you touch it. Don't even do it.
You talking about watches?
Yeah, horrendous. Don't buy someone else's garbage.
If you're building a collection, Okay, and you're building a collection for the long term. You want to pass it on to your kids. You want it to increase in value over time. There's what are called the big three. The big three, I'm skipping forward a little bit. The big three are typically Patek Philippe, Vacheron Constantin, and Audemars Piguet. Those are known as the big three. They do hold their value over time. Now, I will say they've taken a severe value hit over the course of the last couple of years, because a couple of years ago, when inflation started to kick in, there were a bunch of Bitcoin billionaires who lost a lot of money, and they started flooding the market with some of these watches. So if you, like I did, bought some expensive watches a couple of years ago, you picked the wrong time to buy those watches. But if you wait long enough, they will go back up.
Right, really controversial topic, and I absolutely disagree with everything he says. And I like Ben Shapiro. I think he's cool. I don't know what he stands for, but this is absolutely incorrect. The big three is known as the Holy Trinity. That's correct. Audemars Piguet, Vacheron Constantin, and Patek Philippe. However, they don't necessarily increase in value. Let me arguably to say that Vacheron Constantin just tanks in value every day. The period of COVID is a period we cannot measure. People say the watch market crashed. That's incorrect. The watch market didn't crash. There was a period of time, once in a generation type of event called COVID, where we were all locked in our houses, and all of a sudden money was thrown at us with free loans and all sorts of bullshit, and all of a sudden people had money and started buying assets, and people started realizing Rolex had a waiting list. That means you can actually flip a watch. You can make money with watches. How about that? That drove up the price.
That's why I started Pride and Pinion.
No, I started Pride and Pinion 3 years before that, you dickhead. Even a brand like Girard-Perregaux with the Laureato was victim of that. At some point, that watch was sold at $120,000. Today, that's back to normality. I think it's about $40,000, to be honest. But what he's saying is not correct. So don't go out and buy APs and Pateks and Vacherons because it increases over time massively. That's incorrect. If we look over the 10-year time, year by year, watches do increase from an average of 6 to 9% annually. Take COVID out of it, you still see 6 to 9%. Period of COVID, you need to cut that out of your calendar. Cut it out. If you look at the Submariner today in comparison to what it was prior to COVID, it's still more expensive. So it is indeed a good way to store money, but watches are not guaranteed investments. So don't believe that.
Makes really pretty stuff. Omega makes beautiful stuff. There's a bunch of stuff from Omega that's really nice. I have a bunch of Omega watches, actually. I have one of my first watches was given to me by my grandmother because my grandfather had owned it. It was an Omega Constellation. That's like $700, $800 probably. Some of the new Omega watches are really pretty. Like the James Bond watch, I really love. I wear that one all the time. Tag Heuer, as I mentioned before, you can get like a used tag for under $3,000. Breitling makes really pretty watches. One of my first watches was a Breitling Super Ocean. Again, folks, watch collection isn't for everyone, so I'm giving everybody sort of a gradation here of what you're willing to spend. And frankly, if you're looking for investment, buy stocks. Like don't buy watches if you're looking for an investment. It's more of a hobby.
I'm glad you just contradicted yourself. Thank you.
If you're looking up to like $10,000, then you could get a used Rolex Submariner, which is sort of the baseline as classic luxury watch. And there's so many watches that are based.
That Bluesy was my dream watch. That was the watch I always wanted. I literally went to several authorized dealers in the Netherlands and acted like I could buy one. And yeah, they're gonna put me here. Yeah, I'll come back later. Only to just touch the watch and have it on my wrist. I was mad obsessed with that watch. And today, I actually own one of these from the newer generation, the 126613 LBs. I don't own it. I bought it when my son was born, and I will wear that watch 17 times. I've worn that watch now twice on every single one of his birthdays because my son is 2 years old, and we'll wear that 16 more times until he's 18, and then I'll give him that watch with an album of the photos. Right? I'm a nice guy. Fuck off.
So this is a very basic intro. I'm sure I got a bunch of things wrong. Remember, I'm not an actual watch expert. There are plenty of people who know way more than I do, so I'm sure if I screwed it up, they'll leave tons of comments below. It's a very passionate watch community.
Now, I like this guy. I would love to make a video with him. Your bezel socks. Ben, let's have a chat. Let's do a video. Let's talk watches. Hit me up, son. You're a good lad. Respect.